All right, we're live. So happy Valentine's. And a couple of thoughts that I've got from this week for this week's weekly chat. First of all, kind of a core principle of my approach to helping people, which is that you want to, like as a coach or a speaker, you want to build a business that really fulfills you rather than kills you. That's kind of my trite phrase around it. But what I mean by that is like not everybody sets out to grow a business for the business to be as big as humanly possible, in the sense of not everybody wants to be a Zuckerberg or a Musk or anything like that. But for the majority of people, and actually the Pareto principle plays into this, for the majority of people, they don't want to do that. You know, like becoming a billionaire is no easy thing. It's like it's a lot of angst along the way. Having spoken to a few, there is no walk in the park approach to becoming a billionaire. So that said, there's two aspects to it. Obviously, the Pareto principle plays a strong part in this. The Pareto principle says that 80% of your results will come from 20% of your efforts. What it also says is that 80% of the whatever the resource is, so in case of business, 80% of the wealth in a industry, in a niche, will go to 20% of the people. So it always plays out. It actually plays out in nature as well, but it always plays out. So the key then is that you do not want to be in the 80%, you want to be in the 20%. And the easiest way to do that is to change the game. So this ties into the whole marketing idea of become a category of one. Because if you change the frame around which you are operating, you change the game, and therefore you position yourself. And my whole strategy around this is that you position yourself in a way that plays to your natural strengths. So, you know, if I was a talented football player, then I would focus on becoming a football player. I wouldn't focus on becoming a basketball player, because, of course, in the frame of basketball, I can't win. But in the frame of football, I have a potential. I have a chance. I have a way of becoming part of the 20%. So the same is true of your business. You want to change your business. You want to position yourself that plays directly to your strengths. So for me, for example, you know, I am able to kind of come up with ideas on the fly. I'm able to answer questions. I'm able to present. I'm able to come up with a persuasive argument. All of those things are strengths, which are both natural in terms of inherent to my personality and also developed in terms of actually going out and practicing and doing more and more of them. So therefore, it would make sense for me to build a business around that. So the whole point of me building a mastermind was that that naturally plays to all my strengths. Being in front of a room of people plays to my strengths. Being able to take questions and answer them on the fly plays to my strengths. Being able to put that across in a way that is easy to understand, easy to implement, easy to turn into a strategy plays to my strengths. So it's just all automatic. That makes sense. So then within that, it's like, okay, you could define your niche. I think I've used this example before, that when Dave Asprey came out with Bulletproof Coffee, you know, the whole idea of growing his own coffee, creating his own recipe in the terms of, you know, you put butter in it, which sounds disgusting, but actually turns out to be incredibly nice. It's like it's unsalted butter, of course. You wouldn't put salted butter in coffee, but it's a great little recipe. It plays to this idea of, you know, maximizing fats and proteins and all that kind of stuff. But he did not position it as a new coffee. He positioned it as performance enhancement. So he changed the game. He played to his strengths. So that's what you want to do. And then you build the business that will fulfill you. So that allows you to fulfill your human needs in terms of connection, in terms of significance, in terms of contribution, all of those things that allow you to be fulfilled. That's what you're building. And then within that, you decide, okay, this is the kind of lifestyle I want. So this is the kind of money that I need to generate from this business. Because obviously all businesses are value add. You're adding value, you get rewarded for it. So you determine in advance how much reward you want. So it's not I'm going to start a business and see where it goes. I'm going to start a business, see if I can grow it to $1 billion a year. Not easy. What it's more about is you saying, okay, look, here's the kind of lifestyle I want to lead. Here's the kind of legacy I want to leave. Here's the kind of money that would pay for that lifestyle. Here's the kind of money that would pay for that legacy. And then you build a business that supports that. Does that make sense? And I'll let you into another secret. From a strategic point of view, the mastermind, for example, like your front-end business as a coach or a speaker, does not have to be the only business you have. So your front-facing personal branding business of being a coach and a speaker is the business that allows you to maybe fulfill your needs in terms of emotional needs, contribution, connection, significance, and generate revenue to support your lifestyle, and also generate revenue that allows you to build a second business on the side where you have a team of people doing something which doesn't require you being front facing, which then adds another income pillar, another income stream to your overall business. So there's different ways of approaching this, but I always suggest you start by making the Pareto principle work for you. Define the game that you can win. And there's a whole host of things around that, from identifying your strengths through to the kind of niche to even changing the category, like all these things which allow you to win. And I talk about that much more in my mastermind. Yes, that was a cheap plug for my mastermind. But I'm suggesting you do it. I'm suggesting you play to your strengths. I'm suggesting you identify what those strengths are, identify what your experiences are, identify the stories that are unique to you, because they are unique to you. The second part of that is all of the challenges that you face as an individual in terms of growing a business as a coach are not unique to you. There's a phrase, I forget who originally came up with it. It's been repeated so many times, but there's this phrase that is what is most personal is actually most public, or something along. I'm paraphrasing, but so I don't remember the exact phrase. But it's the idea that the problems that you think are unique to you that you are facing are not unique to you. They are universal. Other human beings are facing and have faced exactly the same problems. And that's what's great about that, because there's so many, there's a limited number of patterns, there's a limited number of problems. Any problem you're facing, we've all faced. So therefore, there's solutions to it. If I've overcome a problem, I have a solution. If I've overcome a problem and it's the solution played to my strengths, and I can help you find a solution that plays to your strengths in the same way that you could find a solution that plays to your strengths. But every problem you've got, this is the important part. Every problem you've got is not unique to you. There is a solution. Someone else has already faced that problem. Someone else and multiple someone else's have solved that problem. So the solutions are out there. You don't necessarily have to do it on your own. You have to start with a blank page. You go model somebody. That's the advantage of modeling. Find people who've achieved the result, model what they did, learn from them. So that's that aspect of it. Secondly, I wrote this down the other day because there's things in any business which, I'm talking about playing to your strengths. I talk about create a winnable game. That's a big thing for me. Which also ties in with stacking your advantages. Like one of my phrases is always like stack advantages, not effort. So you want to be stacking your advantages. Secondly, I wrote this down because there are certain things that are always going to be necessary in any business. So I put down, for example, like at the root of everything that you do, you're a coach or a speaker. That's your role, that's your identity. Then there is the next level up from that, which is how are you going to sell your packages and your services? You got to sell. There is no two ways about that. Any business which has a service or has a product has to sell in some way. Now, my suggestion is always going to be find a way to sell that gives you leverage. So that can be through presentations, that can be through webinars, that can be through a video sales letter, but you find a way to do it which gives you leverage. Now, my favorite, obviously, is to do a presentation because that's what I'm good at. I spent 20 odd years pitch speaking. I got good at it. I got very good at it. And there's a lot I can share from there, which would tie into any way you want to sell, whether it's one-to-one, whether it's one-to-many. The principles and the strategies that go with that, they're universal as well. So they will all work. The psychology behind it will all work. It's just really ways of finding, I guess, ultimately selling is about finding ways to leverage psychology that makes it work. If you know you've got something which is of real value, got something that can help people, then obviously you have a moral duty, as far as I'm concerned, to find a way to put that in front of the right people so that they can make the right decision for themselves. If it's the timing's right and everything else, that they buy. But you've got to be able to put that in front of people. So you got to sell. That's a given. Then the third part of that is what's your business model? So your business model is what is it that you're actually selling and how are you delivering it? So if you said, well, I sell single coaching sessions, which last 90 minutes, and you're charging, I don't know, let's say you're saying, let's call it £500 or $500, then it's like, and how are you delivering that? Well, it's one-on-one. Well, that's great. And if that's the business that fulfills you, then fantastic. If that's the business that gives you the freedom you want, if that's the business that gives you the income that you want, solid. You've nailed your business strategy. You've nailed your business model, I should say. However, if it isn't, then it might be, okay, well, you're looking at in terms of, okay, well, how do I create more leverage? So obviously group coaching could be one way of doing that. Seminars is another way of doing that. A mastermind is another way of doing that. Anywhere where you can deliver one-to-many could be a way of doing that. Recording and creating products is another way of doing that. So you are then taking your insights and sharing them with people at a different level. Obviously, the advantage of some sort of interaction with people is that you can listen to their problems. And for me, for example, when somebody asks a question, what I'm actually thinking in my head is what's driving that question? because typically the question people ask is not really the question they want an answer to. There's usually something a little bit deeper, but the question through their language tells me their beliefs, tells me their values, tells me all sorts of things, which will help me understand what's missing for them, and therefore I can give them a solution. But if you're teaching and you're putting things in our product, then obviously there's a limited amount of that you can do because you're not in front of the person, but you can share the most universal truths, the most universal problems, and then obviously offer solutions to it in a training program that you can package. So that's another way of doing it, but it's like building leverage into your business model. So your business model has to be designed to give you the leverage, the freedom, and the impact and the income that you want. That's the third part. And then the fourth part then, of course, is what's your unique advantage? This ties back into the Pareto principle, the whole idea of creating your category of one. It's like, what is your unique advantage? Because if all you're saying is, I'm another coach, I'm another speaker, that's a really hard game to play. You're just then another commodity. So you end up being just a commodity in a sea of commodities, as opposed to standing out and being very specific and being very much, I think Daniel Priestley uses the term key person of influence. So, it's that idea of you stand out to a specific group of people who have a specific set of problems and you have a specific way of solving them, which makes you unique. Now, there's all sorts behind this, like the whole psychology of personal branding, the whole psychology of creating a tribe, the whole psychology of creating a movement, of having your own language, of having your own ideas, like stacking advantages, not stacking effort. That's language, that's an idea that's unique to what I do. But there'll be other people that possibly use different language to maybe describe similar things. But you've got to have a unique advantage, which ties back to your strengths. Without it, you're just making your life way too difficult. It's like building a business where you're crawling across glass every day is not the kind of business that's going to fulfill you. That is a business that will ultimately cause you to burn out, obviously kill you in my metaphorical way. You want to leverage those unique advantages, stack your advantages so that you stand out and attract clients, not chase them. So that obviously is a key thing. So that's all said. That's kind of some insights for that. And the real key with this is don't try and do it all alone. Like, yes, I run a mastermind. Yes, I'd love you to be part of it. And there's a reason for it. In the sense of, if you are trying to do and solve every single problem on your own, one, it's very isolating. It's very lonely. And also you end up just negotiating with your own brain all the time. You don't get outside perspectives. Like you've heard probably a million times before, the idea that, if you grew up in a certain town and you spend all your life in a certain town, you have a certain perspective. And as soon as you travel, you broaden your perspective. Because as soon as you go outside of your town, you discover that other towns have different ways of doing certain things. There'll be some similarities, but there'll be other things they do which are completely different. They may have a different accent, for example. That's different. That broadens your perspective. You suddenly realize not everybody talks exactly the same way all the time. If you go outside of your country, you discover that there might be different cultures. Cultures really are different values or different priorities of values. They have different customs. They have different recipes. They have different meals. Like all these things change your perspective on everything. But you don't get that if you're isolated and just listening to yourself. So doing things alone will always slow you down. Doing things where you get to bounce ideas off someone else, where you get insight from someone else, where you get somebody holding you accountable, where you get somebody helping you execute, like achieving excellence through execution, not trying to refine your plan over and over and over again because you don't think it's going to work. The only way to find out if it's going to work is to actually get started and doing it. But you need that outside influence to help you accelerate what you do and get to where you want to be, to enjoy what you do. All right, so don't try and do everything alone. What I've been up to this week, I shared a little article on using gestures, like the difference between this and this, which is really just to kind of create curiosity. So you should go check out the article because obviously, having done so many presentations, there are certain ways of presenting. I found a way of presenting that plays to my personality and my strengths. And there were things I had to do to make it work in the way that I wanted it to work. And so obviously the article is kind of like a little taster on that. Don't know what you've been doing in terms of content. Maybe you could share that with me. I wrote down here, people want to belong to something. And so I think content that is just like, we can put out content and we'll say, you put out content that's valuable. Absolutely. But if you can put out content that's not only valuable, but allows people to see themselves in the content and see themselves as part of something bigger, a movement perhaps, then that content becomes even more powerful to you from a marketing point of view. And I'm working a lot on that. I haven't got that nailed completely, which is something I thought about this week that I haven't really consciously, deliberately done before, but I realized that's what was missing. You know, I don't know if you've read Scott Alford's book, The Nuclear Effect, which he gives away for free these days. But in there, he has this little acronym for his marketing, which is ROI. So instead of return on investment, the I stands for intimacy, which is really, I talk about trust. But even beyond trust, it's like there's trust and then there's bonding. And I think content which helps people bond to an idea or a movement is much more powerful as a marketing tool and as a way to attract your ideal clients than anything else you could put out. So as I say, I'm just playing with that idea. I've probably had that thought a few times over the years, but I've never really deliberately dived into it. Whereas this week I started diving into it. So I'll have more to share about that as I do more content and see the impact that it has. I'll share that with you, of course. So that's all I'm suggesting at this point. It's like play with the idea that you want content that isn't just adding value. Like there seems to be a trend at the moment where everybody is doing it. Is it called newsjacking? Where it's like you take a current event, you take whatever's going on and you share your perspective on it, which for most people means they share their rant about it. And it's like, you know, I'm probably as susceptible to clickbait stuff as everybody else. But at the same time, I read all this content on platforms like LinkedIn and Facebook and so on. And I'm like, okay. It's like, yes, it might get my attention for a short amount of time until I get bored of reading the same comments over and over again. It might grab my attention because I see flaws in somebody's rant in terms of their argument about what's going on. It might catch my attention for that reason. But at no point has any of this stuff ever made me go, ooh, I want to be part of this person's circle of influence, or I want to hire or be a client of this person. It never does that, ever. So I get that in the hierarchy of trying to get visibility, and maybe this ties back to the idea I said at the beginning, not everybody wants to be a Zuckerberg or a Musk. You don't necessarily want to make $1 billion a year. So therefore, why would you necessarily think about your content as having to appeal to the maximum number of people as possible? Like, I don't need my content to have mass market appeal, to have mass public appeal. But ranting about political issues or what Trump might be doing in office or what Elon Musk might be doing with DOGE or whether Keir Starmer has combed his hair to the left or the right this morning has absolutely zero impact on me aligning with your values related to your business. Does that make sense? So I get it. It might have more mass appeal. And I do see, I mean, I can understand it if you're running a YouTube channel, and there are some very good YouTube channels which are very politically based and they have huge amounts of followers. And maybe they monetize that by having adverts run on their videos, which YouTube decides what those adverts are, and then they pay you a fee for that. How much? I'm not really sure. It's probably a tiny amount per ad. Maybe it adds up when you've got enough views. I get that's a way of doing that. And if that's your business model, fantastic. But I don't think most coaches and speakers, that's not their business model. Their business model is the services and packages that they provide. So running content, I see too much content, in my opinion, that is too much about newsjacking and not enough about what is it you actually do. What is your beliefs? What are your values? What is your movement? What does your business stand for? What does your business stand against? I don't see enough of that. And I want to change that. And certainly need to change it for me, which is why I've got this idea of people need to believe in something bigger than themselves. It's like they want to belong. People ultimately want to belong. So if you can create a movement around what you do, therefore your tribe around what you do, then of course you will attract clients, not be chasing them. All right, I think that's enough for this week. That's kind of my little catch up. I don't think there's anything else I want to share necessarily. Nope, I got my little daily habits, journaling and so on. I talked about those last week. But really my big insight on content this week was that, you know, people want to belong to something. That's typically what's missing from most people's content, including my own, has been, and I want to change that. So if you found this useful, leave me a comment below. If you are stacking your advantages, leave a comment saying I'm stacked.